Hey guys, it's Will here, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, as you can probably see from the video title, I'm talking about Vindicators. So, as you know, I've been trying to make my Scythes of the Emperor better, although they are going on hold for a little while I do a narrative campaign with the Eldar, but I'll still be working on some Scythes ideas in the background with a view to them coming out again once the campaign's over. But yeah, I've been looking for anti-tank options, ranged anti-tank options for the Scythes of the Emperor. Ideally ones that didn't involve me spending a huge amount of cash because, you know, Christmas is coming, or Christmas was coming, and, you know, that costs a bit of money, and, you know, didn't want to splash out on a whole load of new models when you might be getting some for Christmas anyway. So, realised I got these two Vindicators sitting around in my old Lunar Wolves army that I never play anymore. I like the models, I'd like the paint scheme I've done on them, but I just never use the army anymore because I don't really play Heresy anymore. And thought, yeah, okay, these actually aren't too bad. They're one of the units that received a slight buff in the new codex. The Demolition Cannon has gone from being D3 damage and D6 against more than 10 models to just being, not damage, sorry, D3 shots and D6 against larger units to just straight up it's D6 shots, which is a nice little buff. And there's a few other little things in my list that can support them quite nicely. Maybe putting a Master of the Forge from the new Faith and Fury book nearby them to give him +1 ballistic skill with the Warlord trait he can have. So that's going to immediately get around the fact that I'm going to be -1 to hit if I move and shoot. Alternatively, I can stick one of them into the Tactical Doctrine or both into the Tactical Doctrine because I'm an Ultramarine successor, and there are ways to do that, either just through the Doctrines rolling on or a Warlord trait, or just playing Big Guns Never Tire has the same effect, allowing them to ignore the penalty. Stack that with the Tech Marine and they are suddenly 2+ to hit with all those nice strength 10 D6 damage, -3 or -4 AP shots. You know, they look on paper like a really decent gun. Range is a bit short, but I generally play +3 inches on my range as a chapter tactic anyway. And my other one, or other chapter tactic, is stealthy, is going to make them more resilient. They're already more resilient than a standard tank with toughness 8 anyway. So a pair of them, I'm putting out an average of 7 strength 10 shots that do D6 damage each with a good AP, 22 wounds with toughness 8, 3+ save, rising to 2 up at over 12 inches. You know, they seem like a nice option. Chapter Master nearby, Lieutenant nearby, get some rerolls in there. Could be really good. And I did the math hammer on these guys. So on average, 2 of them, costing 127 points each in the loadout I've got here, which is just the Stormbolter upgrade. Average in the presence of a Master of the Forge with the +1 to hit Warlord trait, a Captain and a Lieutenant gives me an average of 15.4 wounds inflicted on a Lehman Russ or equivalent, like a repulsor, from the 2 tanks in one shooting phase, providing they're in range and aren't suffering any negative modifiers to hit, i.e. they're in the Tactical Doctrine. And I worked it out under Tactical Doctrine. And yeah, that doesn't sound too bad actually. I mean, that is almost enough to wreck a repulsor, certainly put a big hole in it. It'll take down a Lehman Russ in just one volley from these 2 tanks. So, what's the problem then? I'm 4 minutes in, why haven't I talked about the problem yet? Well, first up, the biggest problem is how random they are. That random number of shots, I mean, D6 sounds good, but you can guarantee that when you really need it to do the job, you're going to roll a 1 or a 2 for both of them. And yeah, you could spend a CP to re-roll them, but then that precludes you then using it later for the damage thing. And you know, there's only so many things you're going to want, only so many CP you have, and so many options on what you can use them for. In the Space Marine list, I mean, with the loadout I'm running, I'm currently spending like anything from 3 to 5 CP before the game's even started for various Warlord traits, relics, stuff like that. So, you know, it's like, I don't really want to have to spend more CP. And come on, you know what happens with a CP reroll. Oh, I've rolled a 2, really wanted higher than that. Okay, I'll re-roll it. Oh, and I've got a 1, and it's actually, you know, messed me up. And that is something I really felt in the games I've tested these guys out in, just sort of proxying them into my Scythes. Clearly wanted to test them before I repainted them. And yeah, they just didn't do the job. They just weren't getting enough shots out consistently enough. Next thing is their range. Now, the range isn't terrible, 24 inches rising to 27 with my long range marksman chapter trait, but it's, you know, it's fairly easy to get them into range of something, but fairly hard to get them into range of what you want to get them in. You know, most of the things that these guys are going to want to target, in the majority of cases, are just going to straight up outrange them, unless it's something that's advancing in on me. And then, you know, I have ways of dealing with tanks at short range. They're called power fists and redemptor fists. You know, there are ways to deal with monsters that have got close. It's the monsters a long way away, or the tanks a long way away, that I can't deal with, and they can, you know, just outmaneuver these guys and outrange them, especially once they start degrading, because these guys get very slow very quickly if they start taking damage. So yeah, they're just not performing for me on the tabletop. I mean, in theory they do a lot of damage, but it's just so hit and miss. Finally, the final nail in the coffin for these guys is just how much better options there are in the Space Marine Codex right now. I mean, these guys cost 120, so I think 127, so they are cheap, but for the same price you could get much more reliable long-range damage output out of Devastators for a start. You know, just las cannon Devastators. They're not that strength 10, but to be honest, the highest toughness you routinely encounter is toughness of toughness 8, so the las cannons still do the same, plus you're reliably getting 4 shots at twice the range, and certainly not costing you know, a huge amount. I think it's 160, 170 odd for that squad of 5 with 4 las cannons and an armorium cherub. You've got the Signum in there. You've got, you know, they're a decent squad. Plus a lot of the Space Marine stratagems specify infantry or bikes. They don't necessarily apply to tanks. And these guys are obviously very hard to hide. These can be a bit of a fire magnet. But the unit I think I am going to be settling for as the long-range anti-tank option for my army going forward is the Repulsor Executioner. And the Repulsor Executioner just sums up what, you know, everything that's wrong with these and fixes it. Now granted, it is incredibly expensive. You get nearly 3 of these for what I would be running for the Executioner. So in theory it could be seen as a less resilient option, same toughness and armour, but costs more points, has less wounds than multiples of these. I think it's like 16 wounds, so it's, you know, a lot more than 1, but not as many as 2. But then that gun is just beautiful. The, it's just escaped my name, the big laser. So that is a strength 10 weapon that does d6 damage like this, but the first thing is this unreliable straight d6 damage becomes a reliable d6 can never be less than 3 damage, so you're always doing at least 3 damage for every hit. Number of shots, it's 2. It's not many, but if you move under half movement, or you switch into tactical doctoring so you counter stationary anyway, yeah, you fire 4 shots, so that's 4 nice reliable shots. And then you got the range. The range on that thing, 72 inches, you can run, but you can't hide, you know. If you've got a big model, it's hard to hide from anyway, because you can measure from any point on it, and that long range is just gonna roast everything. So, you know, there you go, just the reliability. And that's what you need when you're playing competitive, is reliability. I mean, potentially an equivalent points of these will do can potentially do a lot more damage than the Repulsor Executioner, but they won't do it reliably, not consistently, not when you really need it and when it really counts. Bear in mind the Repulsor also has a whole lot of smaller guns that can mince through infantry and lighter targets at the same time, making it well worth the points. And finally you can stick a little surprise of intercessors, hellblasters, even aggressors inside it. People forget that Repulsor Executioner is a transport, because people see that big gun. But actually that the Executioner's still got Transport 6. So yeah, I think that is going to be the final nail in the coffin, you know. I mean, they're not exactly units that do the same battlefield role, but when I'm looking for a long-ranged, high-damage anti-tank shot, then yeah, these Vindicators just don't reliably cut it. And that's the key word, reliably. The Repulsor, I think, will, looking at its stats. So I think that could well be my next big purchase for the Scythes, is investing in at least one Repulsor Executioner. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on Vindicators down below, and I'll hopefully see you all again soon. Bye.